So I'd like to call the afternoon session to order, please. And I want to introduce to you the chairman of the panel for this afternoon. Dr. Patrick Smith is the director of the Institute of Government Studies and the former chair professor of political science and professor of graduate studies at Simon Fraser University. And he's going to moderate our afternoon session dealing with future city region prospects. So, Patty, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ken. The title, as Ken says, is
Future City Region Prospects.
the future. That's what I wanted to. A wag once said that people who gaze into crystal balls have to be prepared to eat glass. So we have a good panel to look into the future, partly because of their extensive past. On my immediate left is Richard Stewart, who's the current mayor and long-serving councillor mayor of Coquitlam. Next to him is Richard Walton, who's now a former mayor after the better part of a couple of decades in local government. And at the far end of the table is Dhaliwal, who's the mayor of Metro. That doesn't exist yet. So, with that by way of the briefest of welcomes and introductions, I'm going to turn things over to Richard. Do you want to lead us off?
I assume he's referring to you. I'm in the middle. Okay, there we go. Okay, well, good afternoon. Future city prospects. I'm afraid I tried everything I could to get here for this morning's sessions because there was some really interesting discussion that was going to go on. We, as a region, I think have been doing things relatively well. I've got my issues, as most people do, with elements of governance structure, particularly as it relates to regional transportation. But the region itself, as a co-op, really as a cooperative of municipalities involved in certain elements, I think does an excellent job in delivering those elements of service. We as a region have lots of challenges ahead of us, though. We have everybody in Canada, studies just showed out that almost everybody in Canada would love to live in this region. And a lot of people from other countries would love to live in this region as well. And Coquitlam has one of the highest growth rates in Metro Vancouver, in the province, in fact, in Canada. We're over 2% again last year. And we will continue to grow by about that much in the coming years, by at least that much. One of our big challenges right now is something that was self-inflicted. We fought hard to get SkyTrain to come out to Coquitlam. And when we finally achieved it, we had put in place some planning for the realities associated with a rapid transit line to ensure that we could advance the densities we needed around the SkyTrain stations and redevelop those areas. Those create all kinds of challenges. It's necessary. It certainly is among the things that we had to do as a region, but also as a city. But the challenges are nonetheless there. They're not eliminated. And among those challenges are that we typically build about 1,500 units of housing a year. We don't build them, of course. We see them built around us, and we approve them, about 1,500 units a year in our city. We currently have, I asked our manager to assemble all of the applicants, pre-applicants, the ones that are in stream and the ones that are approved. And it's about 24,000 units of housing. About 1/5 of that, about 4,000 units are rental units. The rest are condominium. And of the 4,000 units, about 1/5 of those are non-market rental. And both of those have been spurred on by some incentives that we put in place to try to finally get some rental housing built because it hadn't been built for decades. So that's our realities in Coquitlam, and I know every community in Metro Vancouver is facing some of the same challenges related to growth, related to housing affordability, related to the lack of rental housing, and related to the impetus to get a regional transportation network that works better than what we have now. We actually have a pretty good one. It's highly ranked, but it nonetheless has strange governance. It has a lot of issues associated with it. I'll give you that as the background related to our city, and I'm going to move on to Richard.
Okay, we have 10 minutes? That's right, okay. I'll probably take some of Richard's time too. So I'm going to ramble a little bit. I'm reading a book right now on blockchain technologies. I'm sort of fascinated by the social implications of blockchain going forward. And one of the premises is that there's a massive erosion of trust by people in the Western world in their institutions, whether they're government institutions or financial institutions. And therefore, people who are out trying to hype blockchain technologies and various investment opportunities associated with it are using this as the principal lever coming forward. And I think it's I was taking the bus over, I thought it was a good starting point for thinking about trust. Because if you start thinking at all about amalgamations or changes in structures of government, the first thing you have to realize is that trust is critical. And if you're in a situation where you've probably got a higher level of trust in existing institutions in a particular community or a country or whatever, then I think you can start tampering with things. I think you have to be very, very careful. The first thing is you do need a very clear value proposition if you're going to start changing how things are structured. And this is no different in business world than it is in the political world. You need to determine, first of all, what is the value proposition? What is it that you're going to provide at the end of a very complex process that's going to provide better quality of life for people than you do at the beginning? And as an accountant, I would strongly suggest that a financial reason for amalgamation is likely the worst. And that sounds sort of goes against convention, because that was the benchmark, of course, we were provided in our region when we were talking about it loosely a decade ago, is, the economics of Ottawa and the economics of Toronto, et cetera, and how they ended up spending more money at the end. And I remember at the time thinking, for a guy who worked with troubled businesses for decades, is that doesn't mean the business isn't healthier. It doesn't mean your staff retention isn't higher. It doesn't mean that there's a general, what the business is trying to do is actually doing a better job of it. So I think the first thing you really have to do is say, why are we doing this? What is it that doesn't work? And the second thing is you need to also define what the sandbox is, because we have, certainly in British Columbia and under our own federal constitution, we have, school boards, municipal governments, regional districts. We have 3 local governments. The existence of school boards, I was on school board initially, and I'm questioning the last 20 years why school boards exist. And I know that's going to get me some anger from some areas. I raised 4 kids through the public school system. They had a great education, but nevertheless, I think the balance between delivering a huge amount of education money plus money for infrastructure through regional districts and the rest of the services local governments provide, I think that the first thing that has to happen for any government that starts looking in that direction is to say, okay, let's first of all take a look at the entire delivery system before we start monkeying around with one particular part. When it comes to individual communities, you need to understand the geographical anomalies and constraints that have created the local governments where they are, because sometimes what appear to be weaknesses actually are strengths. I was talking to some person today about the North Shore and about the 3 different communities, including Lions Bay and Bowen Island. There's actually 5. And the perception is there should be 1 or maybe 2. But having spent my early years in West Vancouver, I can tell you that West Van has no interest in merging or collaborating, really, losing its autonomy with almost anyone, because the reason it separated in 1911 was the fact that it did not want industry, it did not want commerce, it wanted to be a bedroom community, because the entire harbor area was so badly polluted. It was called the Cincinnati of the North. The harbor of Vancouver and all the wood staining industries virtually killed the inner harbor, and West Van wanted nothing to do with it. So they had a very good reason initially for being separate. And the deeper you look into the history of all of our regions, you'll find those kinds of stories that help define the character of communities. And people identify with their community, they identify with the history, they vote, they participate because they identify with that community. You can take that, you can change it, and you can put them in melt them in a much broader pond, and all of a sudden they don't have the same sense of pride and interest in the community that they did. The same thing to a certain thing can be said for the geography and history. Those are very, very much the same way. This region is unique in the world. North Vancouver district is unique in the world. It's the only community that has a deep sea port and has alpine ecology. And as a result, there's concerns and things that are deeply embedded in the community that don't exist in the same way in other places. And those need to be understood if you're looking at changing the way you deliver things. The next thing is that, and I'm sure that my colleagues I've worked with for years will also agree with me on this. Tri-level government synergy is the key. We've been in the public transportation forum for 15 years, trying to line up federal spending programs and budget cycles and provincial ones and governance structures with what's happening in Metro Vancouver. And you don't have any control over which particular government is in power and what their particular priorities are. So you need to be incredibly nimble. You need to make sure you have good relationships with people of all political parties, and very often the ability to execute any change depends entirely upon the existing relationships with the people who are elected. The collaborative skills and interests of local leaders is absolutely critical. And every time there's a new election, as of recently, and new loud voices come up and sparks are flying, etc. And one thing I realized very quickly here is that when you get in the Metro Vancouver forum, you're only one. I was 4.5% of the population, and probably about 4.5% of the votes. Without Coquitlam, without Burnaby on either side, North Vancouver would never accomplish much at all. And those relationships are very deep and very important if you're going to be an effective local government politician. The next thing is the political risk in Victoria. We are creatures of the Constitution. Municipal governments are creatures of the province. The province creates our legislation. They are our parent. However, there's political risk with our parents changing the legislation, because the same people that elect them in Victoria reside in all of our communities and rely on the votes. You could certainly, the North Shore's had 3 fairly safe seats for the provincial Liberals for a long period of time. Certainly, if the provincial government tried to annex West Vancouver to North Vancouver, you'd probably find West Vancouver would turn NDP. And that's an extreme example, but the point is that politics and the effects of politics and elections are very much on the mind of folks who are on the other side of the water. The issue of consultation and referenda. I'm a Brit originally. My sister and brother-in-law each voted either way in Brexit. I've still got emails flashing by every night. The marriage is held together. It's probably better than the country is. But the issue of consulting and going out is absolutely critical. It can go very, very wrong. The TransLink, I was one of the point guys on the TransLink referendum 3 or 4 years ago. Why? Because we had to. Because it was a hurdle that was put up by the provincial government, and we had to jump over that hurdle in the vain chance it would work in order for us to be able to move forward. And sometimes, referenda sounds like the greatest thing in democracy, but it can go terribly wrong, as we found out recently, and they have in one of the oldest democracies, the UK. And just a couple more observations. I do have a fair amount of experience in Sweden through Natural Step, and I've got a number of conferences right there, and I hosted and went back and forth with the mayor of Linköping about 10 years ago, and we learned a lot about each other's community. That time, Anne-Catherine Hirt had 108 councillors. Linköping, first of all, is 120,000 people. It's a city-state. It's like a small Metro Vancouver. With only 120,000 people, 60,000 in Linköping, 60,000 in the community realm. They had over 100 people elected to 8-9 political parties, and then those people collaborated to choose their mayor, right? So you had 108 people working to choose the mayor, which she was chosen. They had to observe a European Union decree that went down to the Swedish government where there were no landfills to be no landfills could exist in Sweden, I think, by 2018. I think they're all gone now. And if Linköping didn't figure out how to get rid of their waste, by 2018, they would have massive penalties that would be imposed for the European Union down to the Swedish government, down to them. So all those politicians in Linköping, they had to find a way of getting rid of the garbage. They did all the science work and they did incineration. So at the same time, Metro Vancouver was wrestling with incineration and we were having a lot of environmental uproar here, Linköping had gone ahead and done it, because if they didn't, they'd have massive financial penalties from the European Union. So the issue of where progressive legislation or where it flows from differs from country to country. In Europe, the environmental legislation flows from the top down, whereas I found more in Canada, it tends to flow from initiatives, and the United States from initiatives going up. And that can have massive implications depending upon how you structure your local government and how your decision making takes place. And I think I'll probably stop right there, and hopefully I just try to give you some thoughts for potentially some questions afterwards. So.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's great to be here, and thank you to Professor Patty Smith and SFU Urban Studies program for inviting me to speak with you this afternoon. I'm Dhaliwal. I am representing Metro Vancouver as the chair of the board of directors. It's a great pleasure to be here once again. I'm extremely proud of how well the regional district delivers its goals and meets its objectives in terms of serving the community and in meeting its responsibility. I firmly believe that the regional model has been a factor in making our region one of the most livable regions in the entire world. And it is, in my view, the way forward if we are to maintain that standard and tackle the challenges that lie ahead. In order to really frame the discussion this afternoon, I should tell you something about our district, regional district, and what we do. It's a fair amount of undertaking on part of our members. So I, as a new chair, had to rely on the staff to make some notes for me, and which I'm going to deliver, because it's a huge file, and I would be just pretending that I know everything. So I said, well, in order to really give a perspective of what this district is about, let's talk about what happens here now. As a federation, as you know, there are 20 municipalities and one First Treaty First Nation, and one electoral area. Metro Vancouver provides wholesale regional utility services, including drinking water, liquid waste treatment, solid waste management, to 23 member jurisdictions, from village of Lions Bay all the way to the township of Langley. Metro Vancouver also regulates air quality, plans for urban growth, manages regional parks system, and affordable housing, among other functions. Municipalities in the regions have long recognized the value of working together. Our history is full of evidence that the regional cooperation brings tremendous benefits to all of us. Back in 1914, visionary leaders recognized that it would be far more successful in addressing the region's wastewater needs. If they worked together, they would be more effective and democratic. And if each member tried to provide, rather than each member tried to provide their own services or rely on private utility companies. In a regional district, local governments keep valuable assets in the public trust and pool their resources to take advantage of economies of scale and regional leverage. Regional districts are also source of information, technical expertise, and professional capacity, resources that are invaluable to the communities, both large and small. As a federation of the willing, a regional district provides a forum for census-based decision-making, one that enables a unified front when seeking support from other orders of governments, both in terms of advancing policy and securing funding. So let's talk about services that
what we get for the value for money. The average household in our region pays just over $500 for every service that Metro Vancouver provides. That's water, liquid waste, solid waste, air quality, regional parks, affordable housing, regional planning, and more. For the cost of $500 a year. And that cost has risen less than $10 a year over the past decade. And when you look at the quality of these services, we are delivering them to the very highest standards. In water services, for example, we manage 3 protected watersheds and operate and maintain 5 dams, 2 best-in-class water treatment plants, and a vast transmission system that delivers over 1 billion liters of some of the best drinking water in the world to 2.5 million people throughout the region every day. All that water delivered seamlessly in partnership with our member jurisdictions, and all for less than 75 cents per 1,000 liters, 75 cents. And you can see the value, what you get for money when you work collaboratively like that. In solid waste, our collaborative efforts have allowed us to achieve one of the highest waste diversion rates in any urban center in North America, with about 63% of all waste currently being recycled or composted. And liquid waste, our 5 treatment plants treat over 1 billion liters of water every day to protect public health and the environment, while recovering valuable resources. Metro Vancouver is consistently investigating and implementing new and improved recovery technologies. Last year alone, we generated $5.5 million worth of electricity and heat and recovered 40% of the nutrients that entered our system. And our success doesn't just apply to our core utility services. Regional collaboration has resulted in several iterations of regional growth strategy and over many decades, work that has led Metro Vancouver to be named one of the most livable regions in the world, time and time again. It's no surprise that our region attracts some 35,000 new residents every year. Collaborative planning is essential to making sure that this growth is happening in a structured way that supports our shared goals. Our regional growth strategy, Metro 2040, is a big picture strategic work framework that guides this growth for both the regional district and municipalities. Smart land use planning is absolutely critical because we are dealing with a very limited land base. Metro 2040 seeks to contain urban sprawl, protect green spaces, support the economy, and develop complete communities connected with sustainable transportation choices. It's a shared plan by all members, TransLink, and neighboring regional districts developed and agreed to. A regional approach to economic development is another opportunity we are working on. You heard earlier former Chair Greg Moore speak about that. Metro Vancouver is a great place to do business. It's already home to more than 50% of BC population and economic activity. We are recognized globally for overall livability, our diverse and vibrant culture, our excellent services and amenity, and a high quality of life. So it just makes sense to bring all the key stakeholders together to figure out how to best present a unified region on the world stage in order to successfully compete for investment. Let's talk about governance of it. How are decisions made? With 40 elected officials representing 23 jurisdictions at the board every community has a voice. Over a dozen standing committees comprising 84 individuals provide input and recommendations to the board. Board directors and committee members examine issues through a regional lens and are constantly looking to balance regional and local interests. Working together to build a strong and a cohesive region while retaining local character of urban and rural areas is one of the distinctive features of Metro Vancouver, and something we should be all proud of. I would be remiss if I did not mention the role of the staff, both from within our jurisdictions and the regional district, in working together every single day and finding solutions to the issues that arise. This is essential. If we are to tackle big issues like climate change, which many of you know I'm saying something very close to. Metro Vancouver and its member jurisdictions have been leader in climate action for over 20 years. The board has committed to a regional target of 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from 2007 levels by 2050. Climate change-related strategies and actions have long been incorporated into our management plans. But now we are doing more to build on previous efforts. Adaptation is an important aspect of our approach. Metro Vancouver is working to ensure regional infrastructure, ecosystems, and communities are resilient to the changing climate. To that end, we are engaging stakeholders on the implementation of our recently adopted Climate 2050 strategic framework. Over the next few months, we will be initiating consultation on our Climate 2050 roadmaps for 10 different sectors to meet our GHG reduction target and plan for adaptation to climate change. We are already facing more and more extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and droughts. All of us, businesses, governments, and citizens, must work together to achieve a robust and resilient future for the region. On the amalgamation, over the years, I have closely followed developments around Canada, regarding municipal amalgamation. Some of the common misconceptions I have heard, and I will just quickly speak, are those that people would say that the amalgamation means cost savings for taxpayers. Unfortunately, time and again, we have seen the exact opposite. Neither Toronto, Halifax, nor Montreal experienced any cost savings after amalgamation. Details like wages and infrastructure redundancies can easily increase cost after amalgamation. Others say that the amalgamation means better democracy. But consider this. Metro Vancouver Committee Board structure engages more than 80 elected officials representing 23 jurisdictions. Amalgamation would only mean few voices around the table. Let's see what has happened in Toronto for that matter. Finally, some would point to efficiency with the thought that amalgamation would let us get things done faster. That's to say, the faster doesn't mean it's better. Taking the time to consider many perspectives results in smarter and more resilient policies. It's important that all of us pull in the same direction. In summary, the regional model has served us well for over 100 years and is the foundation of our successes and foundation for our future successes. It's a structure that allows us to be effectively and equitably address challenges facing our communities, such as population growth, aging, infrastructure, affordability, and transportation. Metro Vancouver is one of the most desirable places in the world to live and do business, one blessed with magnificent natural amenities, a diverse and welcoming community, and a prevailing spirit of innovation. The many purported benefits of amalgamation are already being realized through the regional model. As was mentioned earlier this afternoon by Greg Moore, that the most expensive services that the region generally provides and puts lots of money in is the infrastructure relating to drinking water and liquid waste. And that one we're doing, as well as also solid waste collection and disposing of it. The many purported benefits of amalgamations are already being displayed and done very efficiently. The path forward is clear. We operate in a rapidly evolving world that increasingly favors collaboration over competition. All communities in our region have something to offer. As chair of Metro Vancouver, I will continue to work towards leveraging our strength as a regional federation through collaboration. I have every confidence that we are moving in the right direction. So thank you very much for the time today, and thank you for being here for most of the day, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
We have some time for some questions, and I think our panelists have set us up with some things to think about that add value from the discussion that was on this morning. I'm going to maybe just do what we did with the earlier panels, which is to collect 2 or 3 questions and then pose them for who on the panel might feel most inclined to respond to them. So can we start off with your questions?
Hi there. I just want to say thank you for your service over the past number of years to our communities here in the region. I want to pose the question around the word equity. And so I'm looking at a panel of men. So there's no female representatives at this panel, which I just want to highlight as a gap. But across the region, we know women experience cities differently. What kind of work, and when we think about planning for the region, how do we make sure that we're bringing in that gendered perspective? And then the other thing I want to add is how do we work to make sure that we include the perspectives of millennials and post-millennials who are often too busy or or not engaged in the conversations that are really critical to building the cities that they will be living in or they are living in.
That might be a big enough issue for the panel to just jump in.
I can start as Ashes from my community. So, one of the things I found frustrating as a mayor of a North Shore community over the years is it's been the minorities have not been represented on council at all in either North Van City, West Van, or North Van District. And I've certainly over the years, I know some of my other colleagues who've certainly anyone who's expressed an interest in running who's basically, under 40, put it bluntly, is from anything other than, the Northern European origin, et cetera. I've dropped what I'm doing and encouraged whatever I possibly can. And it's an ongoing frustration, I suspect, because our communities differ so much across the North Shore as to what their ethnicity is originally. We've certainly got an aging population on the North Shore, and the 10 of the people who vote and get heavily involved in municipal issues, especially at my council meeting, the average age in the audience was probably well over 60 to 70, and over that very often on many nights, and trying to get people involved and take an active interest. In a community like North Shore, for example, I'd say well over half, maybe 3/4 of our young people leave and end up living in other communities where they are able to afford real estate. And it seems to me there's a connection between buying real estate and effectively putting down small roots, and then all of a sudden taking an active interest in your own community. And the North Shore and the western part of Vancouver and others are the most difficult places for our millennials to get into that particular game, and as a result, level of political involvement tends to be less as well. So the question was, how do you deal with that? And you can certainly talk about it. It's been talked about at various forums. It's been talked about at the various councils, et cetera. But we never figured out, despite our collective efforts, how you deal with that. And the communities that my 4 adult kids and the communities that they're in, there's far more active involvement of younger people when they have an opportunity to become owners in real estate. They take it's like their interest in the decisions in their community, especially if they're thinking of starting families, all of a sudden jumps dramatically. And that's a demographic issue very much so.
I will. I'll add that. Okay, Coquitlam's experience. We had 19 people present themselves in the last municipal election for mayor and council. 3 for mayor and 16 for council. Of those 19 candidates, 4 were women, and 3 of them got elected. So we elected. The voters elected 75% of the women, and 33% of the men who put themselves forward. But it's really hard to get gender balance when we don't have as many candidates from one gender. It's similarly, I know that other communities have faced the same kind of experience. And so I've gone to great lengths, and some of you have known of some of the work that I've done on trying to remove barriers, find the perceived barriers, the non-perceived barriers, to women in particular stepping forward into running for council. We hear all the time of some of the perceptions of the job that some people don't like. And I'll tell you that politics is part of it. The viciousness of politics today and the unpleasantness of social media, for example. We heard from candidates in the last election, or people who stepped away from it in the last election, that simply said, "I'm stepping away from it because of the way that politics is played today, as though it was a game, and it makes it so sometimes so that it's harder to get a broad diversity presenting themselves for election." But when they do present, in Coquitlam, for example, we ended up, as I say, the voters made the decision that they wanted women on council, despite the fact that very few presented themselves. And then as for this panel, none of us chose the rest of the panelists. But that said, we also hear from, because there are fewer women involved in lots of different institutions, we hear from the ones that are involved that they are the ones that are constantly looked to make sure that this committee is balanced and this committee is balanced and such. And so they end up, potentially end up being put onto all kinds of things that the men aren't asked to do, because there are so many more men available for those. And I'd love to see more young people as well get engaged. But as Richard said, our council meetings are the same. We don't get young people out to the council meetings. Part of that, I think, is because they know they're available on their phone. At least I'm hoping that that's the reason, but I really doubt that none of them are at home watching our council meetings on their phone.
I'll quickly add that I'm obviously very cognizant of, when you look at the panel, it's not fully representative of diversity, particularly around women and age. It's a slow go. First thing is, I want to admit that we recognize there's a problem. It's a huge problem, both bringing equity in gender as well as on age. But I've seen it over the last few years now. I'm encouraged. I have participated at the both provincial, federal, and local level, now at regional level. I see slowly we are getting a little better. It's a good sign. I see in the last election some more younger people turned out to vote. A few more younger mayors were elected in the last round in our region. Not enough women. We have only 3 women that mayors were elected, just about 3, I believe, and they're on our board. But one thing we try to do at the board level is trying to balance our committees with very much in the gender equity. And let's face it, actually committees are the one which do heavy lifting in creating a policy. So I'm very pleased to see that we get a whole lot of input, but that really doesn't do the job. I recognize that we need to do, and that's, I believe, is the first thing that one must do, that there is a deficiency, I recognize that, and all of us need to work a lot harder to make it more attractive, more respectable environment for everyone to come forward, and certainly we have a long ways to go, so thank you for raising it.
Just a quick comment. I misspoke a minute ago. There's 35 elected people on the North Shore, including the school boards, MPs, MLAs, et cetera. And I believe 50% are women. So the challenge is the amount of younger people represented and people with different differing ethnicity.
I see some hands up. Gentleman right here.
I'd like to preface comments with a couple of quick questions, or a double-pronged question. Would you support the creation of a minister position or a civil servant position similar to the existing municipal auditor general for municipalities or the inspector of municipalities? But this would be a civil servant or a minister, elected official, that would be responsible for creating a report that would be the result of an assessment of the potential costs and benefits of merging not all of Metro Vancouver's cities, but several of the smaller ones into bigger ones. For example, the city of White Rock, 20,000 people, into Surrey, 540,000 people, and the two Langleys, the very small city of Langley into the much larger township of Langley. So that's the first question. Would you be in favor of having either an elected official position created, a minister, or a civil servant position that would be responsible for the evaluation and a resulting public report on potential advantages of amalgamating several cities in Metro, not all of it? And the other prong of the question is, would you be in favor of having a report commission that would assess the viability of having the south of Fraser cities, the major ones, Delta, Surrey, White Rock, and the two Langleys, police forces amalgamated, so there'd be one south of Fraser police force? And this is kind of a secondary question, so please answer my first one first if you have a preference. But I raise this issue of policing because, as I think many people in this room know, Surrey wants to change its police force from RCMP to a municipal police force, which is going to cost a great deal more than the existing model of the RCMP. And I foresee, and I think many other people would foresee, there'd be a way of making a win-win situation for all if it was just one RCMP outfit for the whole of the south of the Fraser. But without provincial leadership to make discussions happen on that topic, it will never happen. So there needs to be, I say, and that's back to my question, I'll let you answer now, would you support the creation of a minister position whose purpose would be to create a report on the potential advantages of amalgamation? And I think I better add this as well, collaboration between cities in the region, not all cities, but groups of cities.
So let me turn that over to the panel. You talked about sub-amalgamation in geographic terms and also functional amalgamation in terms of an area like policing.
Increased collaboration amongst groups of cities on specific narrow issues such as policing, the south of the Fraser, and merging smaller cities into bigger cities.
Let me put it to the panel.
I think I alluded to that fact earlier, that this is a lot more saving costs or any cost that you think that might be able to save because merging. We already have proof of that where cities where they tried to merge, like Montreal, eventually ended up going back to different local municipalities. But there was no savings in costs to Montreal, to Halifax, Toronto, etc. So there isn't much of a need. But big thing is about people recognizing their representation. If you have communities now, they all have a voice. And what you do with amalgamation is basically stifle those voices. You do make decision in the central, some farther away, where you do not address those things. So it's not about cost, it's not about geography, it's more about neighborhoods representing themselves at the table. As far as the policing is concerned, there's already a fair amount of collaboration going on. The earlier panel, which stated, the sergeant said, currently we have these integrated teams. And they are now looking after all major crime. All we now do in local communities is basically look after what is needed at the street. Those are the decisions that now local police can make. In fact, we have gone and decentralized within Burnaby from our headquarters of police into what we call community policing, because you are now exactly where communities are. These are the policemen who and women who serve the community. They're close to people, they understand them, they recognize them, they know what the issues are, they can deal. So I'm not much for this thing, merging police. And if police is really what their work, what they wanted to do, they can easily communicate on major issues, and they do anyway. So it's more of a managing the local communities, and we think the current system, current model for policing works wonderful.
Good. So your question was whether or not a ministry should be created. No, I wouldn't support that, because the Ministry of Community Affairs already has the ability to do that. If I can't remember, I think it's a she, or right now who's the minister, if she wishes. Oh, is it Selena? Oh, I thought she was housing. Is that my sleep? Housing. Okay, sorry. I'm not a partisan politician, so I just know Selena. Okay, she can do that. She doesn't need to create a brand new ministry with staff and costs and everything else. North Van District last year, we asked the city to do an amalgamation study with us, and they declined, so we did it anyway. And then we reported it out, and they weren't very happy with the results. So we took the initiative. West Vancouver, Sir, you and I have talked earlier. I am from West Van. West Van has never had any interest in amalgamating with us. In fact, a classic example, the North Shore was one community. And in 1911 and 1912, I think West Van pulled out and North Van City pulled out. North Van City, because it got electricity, and there were streetcars, and it was a real estate play to separate the more expensive land around Lonsdale. So that was a agreed real estate play that pulled the city out. And West Van didn't want to be polluted and be part of the Inner Harbor growing city. So North Van District has left a shell of what was there before. So it was already deamalgamated. And both communities don't want to go back the other way. So why a ministry would want to come in and say, when we actually get along very well together and work very collectively well together, there's no problem, apart from the fact that, yeah, it probably does cost the community a little bit more, but I'm not hearing, resonating voices, anyone saying that is the biggest issue in their lives. So if it works, like I said earlier, you need to be careful before you start tampering around, or it may end up worse.
So specific to the question about an individual to do a report, I'm fine with that. Let's have all those kinds of make sure that the decisions we make are based on evidence, and let's have that evidence generated, and let's make sure that we examine the pluses and minuses. Sav actually made a good point. In Metro Vancouver, we have regional policing on any of the big stuff, if it's gangs, if it's IHIT, iCars, police dogs. These are regional functions done sometimes through the RCMP, and certainly any of the RCMP policed communities. Like you mentioned south of the Fraser, for example. Well, let's count Richmond as south of the Fraser. Surrey, Langley's, Richmond are all RCMP communities, and I'll tell you, I get to watch that. If there's a school lockdown in Coquitlam, suddenly there's a bunch of cars in the parking lot with police officers that I don't know because they're from Burnaby or they're from Langley or they're from Surrey, and they've arrived like 7 minutes after the call because RCMP acts regionally and kind of almost in a precinct way, although of course we each pay our costs. So regional policing isn't as much of an issue, other than Vancouver opts not to be part of IHIT, for example. They call for regional policing in Vancouver and they say, we demand regional policing, and yet the main regional function of policing, and that is IHIT, the homicide investigation team, they won't be part of it. They run their own homicide investigations. And so that's the political and controversial thing I will say today. Let's, by all means, let's examine it. But I think we'll end up with not just finding out that it doesn't save any money. It won't save any money. That said, there is one element where getting rid of the lines would benefit. Just like North Vancouver in 1913, two communities in what was the district of Coquitlam, which is a large rectangle at the time, Port Moody became a city, and Port Coquitlam became a city about a month apart in 1913. Our fifth mayor was Mayor Mars. He became the first mayor of the city of Port Coquitlam, and all they did was the landowners in Port Coquitlam said, we want all the taxes associated with the railway and the industrial hub and all of that sparse land over there that would be hard to service and doesn't have pipes in the ground. Let someone else figure that one out. And so the district of Coquitlam was left with the expensive challenge of trying to service land, and the cities took the high taxes. There's no reason for those boundaries. And what happens with the boundaries, and I'll use Burnaby as an example, but gently. North Road is the boundary between Coquitlam and Burnaby. North Road has all kinds of access from Coquitlam, and all of the access into Burnaby is barricaded all the way up North Road because the residents in those neighborhoods don't want Coquitlam residents cutting through those neighborhoods, and I get it. But you wouldn't have done that if that was not a municipal boundary. You would have done it somewhere else. You would have tried to work out the traffic patterns based on a more regional transportation plan. And it's those regional plans, like we have with Metro Vancouver. Let's face it, the sewage treatment in this region is done regionally, and it's done extremely well because the municipal boundaries don't pay. They're of no consequence whatsoever to designing a sewage system. Or they ought not to be, and so on those functions that works really well, and I think that a commission would find that actually it's working well for almost all of it.
Thank you, gentleman here in the black cap.
So I have a Metro Vancouver governance question. Metro Vancouver Director Dhaliwal said about $500 per household. They also have a huge capital budget. But there's only this sort of indirect voting for the directors by the election. Past director Moore was fairly adamant in saying that he doesn't support a separate elected board. But I wonder if there's a way to, when you have a local government election, that in addition to voting for your mayors, your council, your school, you're also casting a vote for who you think would be the best the regional director on Metro Vancouver board. So all those elected in the total who's elected, and those members who have the highest votes also amongst Metro Vancouver directors are the ones who become those directors. So there actually is a direct vote by the electorate for Metro Vancouver directors, and there's also a direct connection to the local council.
Well, thank you, Mark. I think I'm not certain whether the system like when you're electing councillors would work also, because at that time it's not really known who is going to be the councillor as such. So to say that this would be a better director. I personally believe the current model that we have allows you the flexibility, because most of the councils change their directors year or second year or something they can, because they do try to rotate as many they can from the representative that each council sends. So the system seems to be okay. The only other thing that has been raised here and there is that if there be a direct election or choosing directors of Metro directly, that goes to award systems, obviously, because you're going to direct. And that really doesn't work very well, because suddenly you have a huge number of people, out of 2.5 million people, you're going to elect maybe as many as just MLAs representing this city. Then suddenly it becomes very much a parochial system where you push the person who can get. So that doesn't work very well. So the system that currently, that local governments, in my view, when they elect their representative to go to Metro, works well, because, and as you know, after one term, every term is generally a new selection of the board. So 4 years, you'll see some changes to that, but I don't see any other way to do it than the way the system works now.
Yeah, I'd suggest that it already exists because when I was elected mayor, communities do it different ways, but when I was elected mayor, I sat down with my 6 colleagues, councillors, on a blank sheet of paper, and we decide collegially who becomes the Metro rep. Now, most communities pick the mayor, but if you remember when the first year Diane Watts was elected, she was a minority as mayor, and her council in its wisdom decided not to appoint Mayor Watts. And they were sort of criticized a little bit for it, not having their mayor sit at the Metro table. I think about 3 months later, they did a bit of a flip-flop, and Mayor Watts was sitting at the table, whereas as a loud regional voice, she should have been. So I had a disagreement with Chair Moore and Chair Louis, and with the former chair, with Lois Jackson as well, because I think their feeling was that they wanted to have, if possible, only Metro directors sitting on the subcommittees, or as close to that as possible. Well, a community like my North End district has only 1 seat. It means that I would be on every one of those subcommittees, and that's an awful lot of work, and I don't think I can even have time to read the agendas. So I argued with Greg successfully that every one of my councillors would sit on one of those. So we looked at it, and we thought, who has the best interest and the best skill set to sit on all subcommittees? And the subcommittees do the lion's share of the work at Metro. It comes forward for the broad board, but it's really the subcommittees that do 80% of the heavy lifting and discussion and debate. So I would suggest that in our community, that's already happened. It's been happening for 12 years. Now, if you want to have separate elections and you elect somebody to go specifically to be the Metro rep, then that person, because they weren't elected to council, might not even know people on council or meet people on council regularly. Then you got an isolated person in the community sitting on all those Metro committees by themselves, including things that link in like water and sewage, utilities, etc. And they don't have any connection with the people who are elected to look after the same thing within municipal boundaries. So I think, I agree. Right now, this gentleman right here has the ability to appoint whoever he wants to all of the Metro committees. But I think there's a broad history of knowledge and discussion and protocol that I think provides very, very good broad representation in the Metro committees. So,
now, there's one other element in Metro Vancouver. Both Sav and Richard have talked about how municipalities end up with their representatives at Metro Vancouver. There's one other representative other than the Tsawwassen First Nation chief, and that's the electoral area A representative, and that representative is directly elected. The electoral area A, which is Barnston Island, Pitt Lake, and UBC, directly elects their member. Only one person ran last time, so he was acclaimed. We're going to have a by-election shortly because he has since stepped away from the role. And I'm not certain, having talked to him, I did talk to him, I got the impression that he didn't find that the direct election was something that allowed him to be appropriately connected. So I understand the question, and it gets posed all the time, would direct elections be better? I don't know that they'd be better. I'd be fine with perhaps the same commission would examine that element of it. But right now, it works quite well. And there's one other subtlety, and that is the oath that you take when you become a member of the board of Metro Vancouver is an oath to do what's in the best interest of Metro Vancouver. And sometimes we end up with members of our community angry at me for the way I voted at Metro Vancouver, because I didn't vote in Coquitlam's best interest. I voted in, and I said, I'm not allowed to vote in Coquitlam's best interest. I had to do what's best for the region, and what's best for the region may well not have been what's best for my community, because the region has to behave as a regional government. It doesn't always work that way, but it is something that we swear, and I take that oath quite seriously, that I'm there to do not the bidding of the people of Coquitlam. I'm there to do what's best for the people of Metro Vancouver.
Other questions? Here, Mike's coming here.
Better take that oath seriously. There's a bagpiper there. First of all, expression of appreciation to each of the three amigos for the presentation. A North Shore comment and a North Shore question, not necessarily responded to only by the North Shore person. the new mayor of the city of North Vancouver, who has also become Sav's close colleague as the vice chair, she, to somebody like me with about a decade and a half of experience of being a fly in the wall at Metro Vancouver, she's certainly contributing quite tremendously and honoring her gender and all of us. I would like to request former Mayor Walton in particular, in the context of the lunchtime keynote, to speak about municipal relationships with Aboriginal people on the North Shore, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh, and how they may have evolved substantially and significantly, by and large, in a good direction in the past decade or so, and prospects for those future relationships. Thank you.
Yeah, I can comment specifically from the North Shore. North Shore, North Vancouver District has West Vancouver, North Vancouver City, and North Vancouver District all have relationships to the Squamish First Nation because there's residents from and reserve lands from all three. Probably there's this capacity, significant capacity issues, and working with First Nations, in that generally speaking, they have so much they want to do and so few hands to do it. I played golf with Chief Gibby Jacob last week, and he's retired from politics. And he was talking about the fact that he, at one point, he has 8 service agreements that he developed, that he was responsible for himself. Our service agreement with Tsleil-Waututh took a team of our people 2.5 years, I think, in order to assign when we eventually did. And they have one, just I think with us, so actually one with Belcara. But the challenge always with First Nations, I think, with reasonably sophisticated urban communities, is that capacity issue. There's so much they want to do, and they have such limited staff and hands in order to do it. And that's generally the biggest challenge we found. Whenever I found any of it was always very high on my agenda whenever I got a call or was reached out by either of the First Nations communities, jump on it as a welcome opportunity to engage and move forward. As Gibby said, I think the Squamish, we think of North Vancouver District as having critical relationship, but he's also had critical relationships in Sechelt, I think Gibson's, Squamish, Whistler, Vancouver, North Vancouver City District, and that it's just very, very difficult to move quickly. And I'd say that's the biggest challenge we have.
Gentleman in gray here.
I'm going to ask a question I asked the panel earlier this morning because it wasn't quite answered. So in a region, you mentioned the power of the regional district and Metro Vancouver delivering sewage and water, big picture items. But the other things that impact people just as much, if not more, and increasingly more in Vancouver or in the region, is things like housing and transit, which are still viewed as a very local and in some cases neighborhood-based decisions. But those decisions truly impact the region. So whether you're changing the mayor's 10-year plan to what your municipality wants to do or doesn't want to do, or whether your council is rejecting affordable housing, that puts pressures on other parts of the region. So today, Vancouver just announced their housing update, and that we've built more low-income and low-cost housing than ever before, yet we're still falling behind vacancy rates. And part of that is because other parts of the region aren't pulling their weight and putting more pressure on parts of the region that are. So what's the role of Metro Vancouver or regional governance and cooperation beyond kind of high-level targets to make sure that housing gets built in an equitable and basis across the region where it's needed? Because political boundaries are one thing, but as we heard later, people, there's a city and then there's municipalities, there's organic and there's political, and people don't make decisions necessarily based on the political boundaries, whether it's North Road, Burnaby, and so we have to figure out how to make it work for the people who live here, not just the politicians and the elections.
Well, the one word that struck me in your question was to ensure, to make sure. There's nothing we can do to make sure that local governments approve housing. Local governments have the mandate in the Local Government Act that says that they get to decide on the land use issues. The region has an element of regional planning. I used to be chair of the regional planning as well as chair of the housing committee at one point, and both of them worked on the regional realities associated with those two issues. But our housing committee, our housing function, is primarily the function of operating a housing corporation that runs nonprofit housing. It doesn't dictate to other municipalities how their housing policies will go. Ultimately, the Local Government Act says that Coquitlam gets to decide on our own what we approve. And we've been approving housing a lot, but some of our neighbors aren't. And we feel the same kind of like, geez, I wish Port Moody was advancing housing around their SkyTrain station, or I wish whatever. And so because if Coquitlam is meeting its growth targets, but we're one of the few that are, then there's no question that we're not gonna, as a region, make the target. And the target isn't even enough to meet the demand for housing that is projected for the next 5 years. So we'd all have to meet our targets. We'd all have to exceed our targets. But one of the realities, again, is that the Local Government Act is set up to make sure that people who are opposed to projects are the ones we listen to.
I just wanted to quickly touch on the fact that it really isn't more housing, it's building new homes, and all that's going to help a whole lot. We have tried quite a bit in Burnaby to build a lot of condos. In fact, I think we probably over the last 5 years have built more condos than we have people come into Burnaby in that time. Except they're not affordable. So the issue around housing isn't only about building more homes, it's about building affordable housing. And that's where the challenges are. Local governments don't have the capacity to really, on their own, create affordable housing other than to trying to wait for somebody to come say, even if the land is made available, the other two orders of government have to be available to put their money into and also support ongoing basis, which the local governments aren't able to do. Vancouver does a lot of those things. They made land available, $250 million worth of land available, still sits idle because there's not a whole lot of other people coming in to build homes. Those are affordable homes. So we're trying very desperately. And Metro Vancouver provides that function. We are not into housing, which are generally for private sector built homes. These are the homes that are built, are we trying to build, and also support housing where it's non-profit, non-basis. We try to make sure that some market rate, but they are below market rate as such, and to help the others. And that housing corporation tries. There's something like at this point 9,400 families who are taking advantage of our housing, and fairly right throughout the metro region. Every community almost has some, but our challenges is not creating it quickly, building its homes that I have found, at least, or many cities are finding that. It is just trying to find a place where people can afford. That continues to be a problem for all of us. I don't think local governments can do it without having a lot of money coming in from the federal and provincial government.
He's got the microphone.
Gentleman at the back is president. He was up before you.
Yes, my name is Nathan Davidovich. I want to expand the thing. Since 1967, I think, there have been 28 or 29 regional districts in the province. Okay, and I think it's time now to join some of them. And in the Lower Mainland, we have 3 regional districts: Central Fraser Valley, Metro Vancouver, and Squamish-Lillooet. And most of those people identify themselves as Lower Mainland people, basically. And we have to think about joining them. The health board, we have 2 health boards in those 3 regional districts, which doesn't make sense, of course, especially when the Metro Vancouver is the only regional district in the province that has 2 health boards in a split at Boundary Road, and, makes a big of a mess, So, and the same thing for transportation. BC Transit is on the other 2, and TransLink is here. And it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. People there they want to join Metro Vancouver. Most of the people I talk to. Squamish is the bedroom community of VII now. 25,000 people. It's not, it's part of Metro Vancouver, basically. So this is what I see needs to be done for the future, is to amalgamate the 3 regional districts into 1 regional district for the whole Lower Mainland, and provide all the services throughout those 3 regional districts.
Why would you stop there? Why not amalgamate all the regional districts?
Well,
and call it a legislature or something?
It's. I think because most of the people identify themselves as this is the Lower Mainland, and they don't want to go farther up north or east, So that's, and the transportation corridors and so forth would connect easily. There was the railway that was discontinued from North Van to Whistler and up, and that connects. And the same thing, there was the railway from Vancouver to Chilliwack that connected, and that was discontinued a long time ago. But, so those people for generation identify themselves with Metro Vancouver. They don't identify themselves with other places.
I suspect you'd get a different opinion from some of them, because I know that there are people that live in Chilliwack that don't consider themselves to be Vancouver residents. They consider themselves to be Fraser Valley residents. But that said, let's take a look at Kelowna and Penticton. They're separated by 60 kilometers of highway, I think it is, or 60 miles of highway. They're in 2 different regional districts, and it's because functionally they don't share any of the same services. There's no pipes that go between the 2. They've got their own water systems, their own sewage systems. Similarly, there's no services that Squamish gets from Metro Vancouver or Metro Vancouver gets from Squamish, because there are no pipes really that connect the 2. So it becomes kind of functional. You have to try and determine where the best delineation is. There's no question that in the valley the delineation is becoming less clear because we're sprawling. We do want us to stop sprawling, and Metro Vancouver has done a great job, I think, with the regional growth strategy and the urban containment boundary to stop the sprawl and to try to work on the densification of the existing developed areas rather than sprawling up into the valley. That said, we're not responsible past Langley, and so that is no question that melding those 2 is an important consideration for the livability of what you call the Lower Mainland.
Yeah, I think Richard's point is right. I think regional districts, there probably are about 5 or 6 in the province that make a whole bunch of sense, maybe 10, because that infrastructure is what is absolutely critical. And it's my daughter lives in one of my daughters lives in Langley, and she has no water. She's on well water, and they can't drink the well water, so she's on district. She's on like a Walmart water or Save On water or whatever. Has to bring in these big barrels, and you already at that point in time you're already into almost the rural part of Langley, where they're not hooked into the sewage or the water system at that point. So the regional district for them is a bit of an anomaly out there. So there's that area in the central Fraser Valley is is sort of questionable where they want to be and where it makes sense for them to be. But I mean, I question whether the good folks up at Pemberton and Darcy and Boston Bar and Lillooet, whether they have a whole bunch of affinity with decisions made in Metro Vancouver, and they're the tail ends of those regional districts. So again, the line's arbitrary, has to be drawn somewhere, and effectively the Fraser Valley is the one that probably is questionable as to its lines.
Particularly questionable on the transportation side, because we now, obviously, the bus from stops at Langley, and the gas tax to pay for the Metro Vancouver transit system stops at Langley. Those are challenges.
They've asked the province to get gas tax in Squamish, Lillooet, and they asked for the establishment of a new transit commission. It was in the legislature last month. So they're going to compete with Metro Vancouver, and there's going to be a whole bunch of problems.
I'm going to suggest a couple of more questions, and we'll be able to compare guests.
So earlier today on one of the panels, we had a couple politicians and a police officer who were speaking about improved service delivery through better coordination between municipalities. And some of that came through shared radio networks being delivered through Port Moody and New Westminster. Greg Moore was talking about efforts to regionalize business licenses and the process to secure film permits. And so my question is, in what areas going forward do you see possibilities for improving service delivery through better coordination among municipalities?
One of the things that we are looking very carefully is working more in the area of licensing, that we had some success. But that initiative is already sort of underway. The thing that the Metro is taking under it's sort of more focused is the regional initiative, prosperity initiative, which is generally trying to attract a whole lot of new investment into the region. Many local governments are doing some work on their own, but they are kind of doing it because of a limited capacity to do it, and not have the ability to advertise and get the word out. So it would be better for us if all of us got together on that, where we could then make a lot more the region more attractive to the investors from either the rest of Canada or across the borders. So that's one of the things we are trying to now go into, which well, if that was successful, we know we'll all would have will benefit from that. More people coming in, and perhaps jobs created as part of this initiative. Working a little bit more closely in terms of other climate change type of adaptation, that we think that if we are going to move in terms of really creating a less waste around plastic, other things that we can collaborate among municipalities, local governments to really create that works for the whole region. If each individual local government does it, it doesn't always does that successfully. So that area is wide open for us to do some more work there. We'll continue to take a look at housing, see how more perhaps advocacy and with the other orders of government, and also providing on a non-profit basis, trying to take on some of the housing, let's say, complexes that are being built, but smaller, let's say, a community-based organization not able to do it, but Metro would be able to perhaps do some more in that area.
There's a real role for regional planning, I believe, and a more significant role than we currently have in the function of regional planning. I think the decisions have to be made locally, but the overarching kinds of guides as to what areas are going to be significant population centers and which areas are going to be industrial land and which areas, those kinds of decisions can be made regionally. And I think I'm a staunch proponent of of the function of regional planning. Coquitlam just moved its dispatch from the Coquitlam Fire Department over to ECOM. It's a decision, well, ECOM essentially is now become the amalgamation of all the dispatch of 911 calls. Almost all of them in the province go through ECOM. So those kinds of functions that are natural to be done regionally or done provincially, I think we have to continue to evolve. The Regional Prosperity Initiative, regional prosperity is something that Metro Vancouver hasn't done very well. Because each municipality, Vancouver has a function where they've got economic development, and Surrey has an economic development. We have an economic development officer, and that means that nobody is speaking on behalf of the region. When we go to contemplate working with a multinational company that wants to set up something in Metro Vancouver, and let's say they're looking for 20 acres of industrial land, and Vancouver says, we don't have 20 acres. So that's it. Okay, well, Surrey does, but no one's speaking for the region. And so I think the RPI, the Regional Prosperity Initiative, I wish it had been able to move forward faster. It's not. And that's partly because of the realities of parochial political challenges. So there's areas we can do better. There's some areas we do excellent.
Yeah, and I fully agree with Richard's comments. Actually, I won't repeat those. The one area, I'll just throw as an observation, and again, I'll use the North Shore as an example. North Van City has one fire hall. North Van District has 5. I'd much rather be a taxpayer in North Van City when I can service 50,000 people from one fire hall in the district, where you service 90,000 people from 5. You can do the math. West Vancouver has a philosophy of no call too small, and therefore they have much higher police and fire because my mother, when she was elderly, used to call the fire department when she fell down in the shower, and that was part of the service delivery standard that was expected. So you find that communities have different levels of expectation and want, and they're prepared to pay often extra for it. And in some cases, if you do combine services, you may find the overall cost goes down, but there'll be winners and losers within a community. Example giving being fire, where in the North Van City is in a much better situation right now than if they collaborate even more closely. Now, on the service side, they work seamlessly together. If there's a fire, and they back each other up and do everything, so the public gets a very good level of service. But there's a myriad of these cost shifting and things that would and I think where there's an opportunity for communities to work together closely, and they do. North Van City and District share RCMP seamlessly. And there's just no issue with it at all. Why do we have 2 school districts on the North Shore? I can never figure that out. North Van City district and city are combined school board. West Van has one. I don't understand with shrinking school system why the school boards. We're not talking about school boards today. That's a significant cost of running schools, and we don't seem to have anyone from the school districts here. But I would suggest that's one area where there could be massive amounts of amalgamation and savings within the province, way more than the municipal level would be at the school board level. I'd even suggest you eliminate school boards. You basically hired the school superintendent, reports to the city manager. You add 2 people to every council, and you have designates from your elected representatives who form a school board of 2, 3, or 5 as a subcommittee of council. Because I was on school board and I chaired it, and I got off at 92 when Van der Zalm brought in the legislation that changed things dramatically at that point in time, and I got off because I had nothing left to do. We had no ability to set any kind of local funding for schools, and it became literally about managing land resources and teacher allocations, which did not need an entire school board to do. So I would suggest, if we're looking at moving forward, that this group, you also take a look at school boards, because I think that's an area that is not have enough discussion. And I probably upset a whole bunch of people probably who were taking notes, but there you go.
It's really easy to see who's not elected anymore. So in Coquitlam, I'll finish with, we do the same. We've got all 5 communities, the Tri-Cities, that includes Belcarre and Anmore. All 5 communities are in one school district. 4 of those communities, other than Port Moody, have one police department. The Coquitlam detachment of the RCMP serves 4 communities, and those things work really, really well. I'll use the fire department as an example, but I will never mention the Coquitlam version of it. But if you go to Queensborough in New Westminster / Annacis Island / Richmond, East Richmond has a fire hall. A kilometer away, New Westminster has a fire hall in Queensborough. A kilometer from both of those, Delta has a fire hall on Annacis Island. All of them cost about $20 million a year or $2 million a year to run. They're about $10 million fire halls, and they cost $2 million a year each to run a fire hall with one company of 4 firefighters. That's not efficient, and I do think that there are ways that communities can get together a little bit better and collaborate related to the perimeter of the radius around a fire hall.
Last question.
Okay. I've got a question about voting and weighted voting at the regional district. As I understand it, today, for example, the City of Vancouver representatives and the City of Surrey representatives, between them, come pretty close to having half of a weighted vote. And there's something about the notion of the weighted votes that I can't say it's not democratic, but it doesn't quite feel as right as if there were ridings within the region, and all of the directors were, were elected from areas of equal population, and they just did ordinary votes. There's something a little bit unsavory about the weighting votes at times. Could you offer any observations or thoughts on that?
It's a very good question. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think the fairest way is just that, the way we do it now, because one, they pay a fair share of services that we deliver. Like listen to whether it's Surrey or Vancouver or Burnaby or Coquitlam, makes no difference. You pay services, and generally, population is a good representative of those services, and based on that population, you have the weighting factor for each director, how many votes they get. So when you think of what each city, each municipality contributes to the overall, let's say, costs of services, they generally have some, obviously, say as a representative of those communities. But the system seems to work very well. Even communities which are much smaller, like Balcarra, or with a few hundred residents, they also have a seat there. So if we really strictly thought, okay, you're going to elect, let's say, one director for 10,000, 20,000 people, chances are they wouldn't have any representation at all. Smaller communities, because considering the number of people that would be around to elect one director, which let's say there are 40 directors, you're looking at maybe these 50,000 to 60,000 people they represent, maybe even more per population if we did that quick math. So, but with the current system, this model allows communities to be, regardless of their size, to be at the table. While the elections are done, every person gets the same vote to really how they're going to govern themselves, regardless of the size where they come from. The only time the weighting factor comes in when we are really talking about the costs that goes into services. So they have a reasonable say, so they don't go home and say, well, we pay 80 cents on the dollar for the cost, but I only got 4 votes to say. So I think that's probably the fairest way to do it. I'd like to hear the other people.
In 13 years, I never remember a situation happening either at Metro Vancouver where the weighted vote caused a sense of frustration or inequity. It seems to be people sense it's based on inherent fairness, and I can't think of a better way of doing it, quite frankly. So that doesn't necessarily justify it. But the only anomaly is in the voting for the chair. And at Metro Vancouver, it's clearly in the legislation that created Metro Vancouver that SAV got voted in not by voted weight, but by the 40 directors, voting one vote, one person there. At TransLink, it's weighted vote. And as a result, the chair of Mayor's Council can be elected with 3 votes. And that's probably should be fixed, and it's been pointed out, but it's still in existence. So.
Yeah, I like Richard. I don't think I can recall an instance where the weighted vote was abused at Metro Vancouver. And I can only think of 2 instances at the region generally, where one might argue that, and they were both at TransLink Mayor's Council, where, well, I've said it in the media, so I can say it here, where Surrey and Vancouver ganged up, were perceived as ganging up on the rest of the community. And the call for the weighted vote, there was actually one motion, there was a motion to amend to change a word for clarity, just for clarity. And the motion was made by me, and everyone seemed to agree with it, but the mayor of Surrey called a weighted vote on it, and it failed with 3 opposed out of the 22 communities. And as a result of that by itself, there was a bit of a backlash. There was a bit of the mayors it was kind of after the discussion was, well, if that ever happens again, I don't know why I'm here if I'm going to be overridden by 3. And therefore, I think it's going to work itself out. We'll simply have because you have absolute power in an ability to stand up and leave. And if 12 people left the mayor's council, the meeting is over. Yeah. So the weighted vote probably needs, and I've talked to Selena Robinson, the minister responsible for TransLink and housing and municipal affairs and a few other things. She's my MLA, and I've talked to her about this particular thing, and she was incredibly frustrated by that reality because she saw the potential for dysfunction in the governance structure's voting system. So she possibly would, at that point, we were talking informally about a supermajority or something like that. So it would be 50% of votes representing 50% of the communities or some other element. I don't think we need to go there, even at TransLink, but I suspect there is government will to make it work at the provincial level with TransLink.
I'm going to stop us there, and I'd like on your collective behalves to join me in thanking this panel. They have more than a half century of experience, so it's a good panel to reflect on not only where we've been, but where we're going. So please join me in thanking them. And I have the enviable task of asking Ken Cameron to come and do a summary, commentary.
Okay, Patty. Our thanks on my behalf too. Thanks to you for chairing this panel of very experienced political people. Half a century sounds a little scary to me, but I guess that's what the numbers add up to. Not individual. I feel better about that. So we're just about done here. 2 things left. One of them is I've been asked to share some very brief summary comments about the day, and then turn it over to Meg Holden to close the session. I've noted down 6 sort of summary themes that I take out of the whole day, thinking about it, particularly in the last half an hour or so. So I'll go through those in order, and I've numbered them. The first question I guess I had in my mind was, do we still need local government? Given the scale of our cities and given the interdependence of our society and the fact that the term community, for example, can mean a worldwide community of people who are in touch on social media and so on, do we need to in fact have a form of local government here for what purpose? And I think the answer is pretty clear. At the end of the day, we all live in places, and those places have requirements for services, and we as residents of a democracy have a right to have not only the access to those services, but to the access to the decision-making processes that determines those services. So I think the answer to that question is a resounding yes. Having said that, however, is that I think one of the challenges we have is finding ways of ensuring that local government works and continues to be relevant in a very rapidly changing society. The second theme was the importance of political culture or political decision, provincial culture and decisions in various provinces of the country. We heard a number of examples of different approaches. There's at least 3 different types. I think we heard that Alberta and Saskatchewan take a very enabling kind of approach to helping their essentially large megacities to to deal with some of the issues of growth and change. We have, I think, in Ontario, a province that has no hesitation in making unilateral decisions about local government structure, right down to the number of people on a council, or whether or not you're going to have regional governments. All of the basics of it are things that the province of Ontario feels quite free to intervene in. I won't say interfering, though I think that's a better term. To do things with local government structure that would be almost inconceivable here in British Columbia, and that brings me to the third area, which is a sort of an attitude on the part of the province of kind of benign neglect, a view that local government is the creation. This is in British Columbia. Local government is the creation of the people. The people have selected the people who are going to be running local government, and if the people want changes, the people can make those changes. And it's really not in the traditional view in this province. Part of the province's job to have its own opinions about how local governments and metropolitan regions should be organized. Of course, there have been times of exceptions, some dramatic changes, such as the Agricultural Land Reserve. Less dramatic, perhaps the introduction or the elimination and then the reintroduction of regional planning as part of a function of regional districts. But generally speaking, I think British Columbia is unique in Canada in the level of desire on the part of the provincial government not to interfere, to respect local democracy and local autonomy, and not to interfere. So the important message here, I think, is that each province undoubtedly is different in some ways, and certainly the attitudes and philosophies can vary from one end of the spectrum to another. The third theme is the role of First Nations, and we've heard a number of different perspectives on it, and the view that First Nations are not local governments and they're nations, and there needs to be a respect for that, and their existence of forms of Aboriginal government that predate European contact. But I think what I found today helped me understand it. In fact, oddly enough, was the concept of the description of the RCMP and its various roles in providing police service in this country, where at one level it's a federal police force acting on behalf of a sovereign nation. At another level, it's a provincial police force providing that rural and province-wide policing function, and then in other places it is the local police force. And I think that First Nations identities, if you like, have those three, at least perhaps those three different dimensions. So at the community level, it's not unreasonable to think of membership in a local federation such as the Greater Vancouver Regional District on the part of a First Nation as being perhaps a useful thing, something that helps the community aspect of First Nations be represented and done in interface with the community's neighbors without in any way compromising the status of the First Nations as defined in other forms of law. So I think that for me, is an important insight to allow us to understand that we're not in welcoming First Nations into local government, we are not treating them as local governments per se in their entirety, but are we respecting that they play a role in the creation of local community, and neighborliness is a very important component of a successful relationship. The fourth theme is one that's just come up, but it's been around the edges all day, and that's the challenges of diversity, both diversity of origins as well as gender diversity, and the sense that we have a considerable distance to go to ensure that our policy-making bodies are reflective of the makeup of our communities and with the aspirations of various components of our communities. And here I think maybe it's a challenge of overcoming some lags between the composition of the communities and the composition of our policy-making bodies. And we all have a responsibility to reduce that lag time as much as possible to ensure that it's 2018 as well as 2015, that what we have in the way of policymaking bodies is clearly representative and reflective of our of the people who are being served. The fifth theme has come up, and I think it's quite important, and that is the phrase that democracy is messy, local government is messy, and that's at least in part because everything in local government is done in public, under the full spotlight, virtually everything under the full spotlight of the media and the public ourselves, that we ought not to fall into the trap of assuming that messy means inefficient, or that messy means unrepresentative, that messy means domination by particular interest groups, that in fact we need to be tolerant of the time that it takes and the amount of debate that it takes in order to make decisions at a local government level in a democratic fashion. And perhaps there's room for more messiness at the other levels of government than that we could all benefit from. So that brings me to my sixth theme, which is the importance of leadership and relationships, of getting the right people in the room, the right people involved, people who can work together and to collaborate. I think we saw some examples of leadership, Big George Ferguson, and when Little George Perry told us what that person had achieved in the way of essentially bringing together time on several different occasions, disparate communities and making them into functioning political entities. It was a remarkable story, and one I think that we need to remember again in this atmosphere where in British Columbia our provincial government likes to see people at the local level solve their own problems rather than stepping into them. I think Kim Baird is an example of outstanding leadership as well. I think her story, if she told it, probably even more evocatively because she's no longer involved, is a very inspiring one. And I also think of Gordon Campbell in his local government mode when he was Mayor of Vancouver and Chair of the GVRD and President of the Union of BC Municipalities, as another leader, someone who was able to tease out followership on the part of other elected people. And so I think it's a reminder that we need to have a system that helps bring out people who make the seemingly impossible possible. And it has been said that good people can make any system work, whether the system is good or bad, but the wrong people can't make the best of systems work. So I think it's important that we ensure and recognize and in fact celebrate the leaders that we've had. And I think today we saw a cross-section of leaders, people with those capabilities, who from this region and elsewhere, who are both active now and others who have moved on. And the quality of that leadership and the amount of thought that these people have given to the issues that we've been discussing, I think bodes very well for the future. So just in closing, I want to offer my own personal thanks to the presenters. It's been a breeze to moderate this session because the people have presented cogent opinions, well expressed, and most importantly, within the time allowed. So we've been able to keep things moving along on track as intended. Also like to thank you as participants for your interest and participation in the program. Now I'll turn it over to Meg for some closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to the heart and hearty who have stuck with us till the end of the day. Thanks very much, Ken. What an amazing Master of Ceremonies to be able to keep on top of the wide-ranging discussion throughout what has been a long and extremely heady day, and then to tie it back into big picture concepts that we can take forward in thinking further about all of this stuff. So thank you very much, Ken. It made me think some of the things that I'm taking away from today are the very practical elements of working as a region or not. Things like radios for cops that work across jurisdictions, and fire stations that could be shared, and sewage treatment facilities that can't be shared. And it strikes me as a very different kind of conversation about regional thinking than I tell my students about when I talk about the days of the GVRD when Ken Cameron was a senior manager, and we talked about the principles of a livable region. But I think it is it's testament to the way in which good people can make any kind of system work, that Ken can then just sort of turn those very practical things that we've been wrestling with today into principles at a higher order to take forward. So thank you, Ken. Thanks also to Steve Kim for his excellent work convening Rethinking the Region this year. And thanks to the student volunteers, to Cam and Nazanin and Matt as well for your help. Thanks to Terry Evans for all of your help in convening today. And also just thanks to our partner, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade. And just to remind you that SFU Urban Studies, we are here in the Harbour Centre building, and SFU Vancouver is celebrating its 30th year this year. We're not going anywhere, so please don't be a stranger for those of you who are not based here full time. And we look forward to many more discussions as we try and build the region that is fit for us to live in. Thank you.